Okay. It says creating live broadcasts, but every other time we have been live when this, when this happens, so I'm pretty sure we're live. Give us a thumbs up if we are live, guys. Hi. You guys know me, Jamie Brooke Wellness here, and I'm super stoked to talk to my friend, Julie Carpenter of Whole Nutrition Simplified. She's all about simplifying eating healthy, well, nutrient-dense whole foods. I love picking your brain. We talk about stuff all the time. And so welcome. I'm super excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Julie is also a nutritional therapy practitioner. She went through the same program through the Nutritional Therapy Association. She just went like a year or two after I did, I think. Was it just like a year ago, right?
I think it's just a year, yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, time flies. She is also a Restart program instructor, which is awesome. We love doing that. And she loves working with families. And, you know, well, actually, I'll just hand it over to you. You just introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Jamie and I really enjoy just bouncing things off of each other. And the NTP brought us together. And like she said, I focused with, where I started exactly is wellness. Nutrition's always been an interest for me. Moving our bodies was always a priority as a family, but I grew up on the standard American diet. And so I thought I was doing good things, moving my body, exercising. And as I've had a family and then other health issues, such as my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I dove deeper into.
Oh no, you froze up. Julie was having internet issues earlier, so hopefully she pops back on.
Am I back?
Okay. Hey, we lost you for a second.
All right.
Yeah, we lost you for a second though, but
I'm sorry.
You're a little pixely. I don't know if there's what's going on, but I can hear you now though. We can see you. Okay, now it looks better.
Sorry.
So you popped off when you were sharing that your father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Yes, and so that sort of drove me a little deeper into the whys, why things were happening, what we could do to fix when somebody is diagnosed with something. You want to? Did it do it again?
A little bit, but you're back.
Okay. It made it, wanted me to fix it quickly, so I was asking the questions of why, what should he be eating? How can we fix this type of thing? And so that just drove me to more of an interest for wellness and knowing there's other answers than just medicines and maybe preventing before we get some of these diseases. And then also my other driving force was my kids, like focus and moods and better sleep. And I knew that, yes, there's medicines for some of that, but I wanted natural ways to help my kids so they didn't have to be on medications. And I didn't feel they were necessary for our situation. They are necessary for some situations, but not, I didn't feel for us. And so I looked to food to help us with that. And we've seen some major changes in my family. And through that.
Can I interrupt for a second? So can you share a little bit, because I know that there are people in this group that have had experiences like that, or have children that, are experiencing those things, or maybe they've even have had a diagnosis, or, just similar situations. So can you share a little bit about that, and what were some of the major changes that you made and what improvements you saw?
Sure. So a big one was we took out a lot of grains. So we went very gluten-free. We did do some blood work to see what were some irritants or, triggers of inflammation and causing other things for my kids. And so through just process of also eliminating things that are more inflammatory. Gluten, sugars. So gluten and sugar were like the two priorities, you know. Those are big ones that play a big role in affecting our wellness. And so once we started really removing those and just learning to listen to our bodies, and also noticing there are some vitamin deficiencies there as well, that we weren't digesting food correctly and absorbing the nutrients. So, you know, really we focused on the gluten and the sugar, and saw major changes with that. And even now, like sometimes they have those things or exposed to those things, and I'm teaching my kids to listen to their bodies and notice when they have changes that it might be triggered by what they ate. And most of the time they do that on their own, which is amazing. And that's really like what I want for my clients, my family, my friends, being in tune with your bodies so you know and have control, right? Like that's what we want, you know?
I love that. I think that's for me too. I was just like, yes, because like my kids, they're 7 and 9 now. My daughter's about to turn 10, and they're definitely like, now it's been years. I mean, obviously you guys know that have been in here. My daughter, I think, was 2 when I started making changes, but like now they're at that age where they can totally connect dots, you know, with like, oh, we went to that birthday party and I had, you know, that cupcake with all the fluorescent dyes in it, and now I feel like my stomach hurts, or I have a headache, or like, you know, my daughter is sensitive to certain dyes, right? So, you know, we avoid the artificial dyes for sure. But sometimes you go to a birthday party or somewhere and, you know, it's there. And, you know, ultimately we just want them to be able to choose, you know, based on their own experiences and how they feel, like, is this worth it? Is it not? Like, and yeah, I love that. Like that's ultimately, it's not about like, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. You froze up a little bit. You know, for me, it's, you know, it's just not about removing these foods and these are bad for you. It's, you know, you want them to be able to make their own choices based on how they feel, what they're learning, you know, so.
Exactly. I mean, that's through this process. At the beginning, it was more me sort of, you know, controlling and trying to remove, but in the process, I taught them along the way to listen. And so I want them to, like you said, I want my kids to make those choices. My oldest is 11 and my youngest is 7. And it's crazy now, like my daughter will say, no, that upsets my stomach. I don't want that anymore. Or she'll have a little and she's like, no. And so I'm proud of that. No, they're not perfect. And yeah, they're going to go to the birthday party. And of course, the cupcake's going to look good. But but I just want them to be understanding of what that choice means for them.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I know. It's funny. Like, I mean, there's definitely a time, because we don't buy those things typically and keep it in our house. Like, we don't have the tubs of ice cream. We don't have, you know, I mean, I'll bring home some dark chocolate and we'll eat, you know, eat stuff like that sometimes. But like, so when we do go out for ice cream or something, it was just recently we took the kids out to dinner and we went to get ice cream afterwards. So it was like a treat. And both of them, or like, I don't know, the person working at the ice cream place was just, I guess, thought it was a great idea to give them like a massive amount of ice cream. So like my daughter has this like cone with like 2 huge scoops, and I'm just like, oh my God, you know, but I was like, whatever. And then my son had a cup of ice cream or whatever, and both of them didn't finish it. And they were just like, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, cause that doesn't usually happen, right? They're just like licking the sides of the bowl, but they were like, I'm full. Like I don't know, like I just don't want any more. It's too much. And I was just like, yay. And not because it was ice cream, but because they were able to like recognize their body's cue that they were full and satisfied. And that's really what is, it's great. Like a lot of adults have issues with that, right? So
Exactly.
I was
Yeah, I
like
mean,
a
I
pro.
feel like
I didn't
that's,
say anything, but I was just like, yay.
I mean, that's a huge win. Like you
Hmm.
want them, so hopefully then they're going to go on and continue that process. And as adults, I mean,
Right.
that's why I love working with this younger age in these families, because
Hmm.
you're grabbing them early so they don't have the struggles that we had to go through to remove some of this,
Right.
um, and not have to deal with some of the pains that, like, what we call or people call common,
Hmm.
symptoms, but they're actually, and they're not natural.
Right.
um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so, if you do it earlier, maybe you won't have those issues.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so what are some of the concerns? So we both have worked with families, and I know I get asked at least a couple of times a week when I work with clients. They're all about uh, learning and making changes for themselves and their own health journeys. But many of them have kids and families, and when they start to feel better and see symptoms or decrease or even go away, they're just like, wow, I want this for my family.
Right.
So they start trying to make those changes in the home, like in terms of like meals for everybody and not just themselves. And you know it's a struggle, right? It's a struggle
Right.
sometimes. So what are some of the challenges that you have heard from clients or?
Well, I mean, I've had it recently, somebody for the restart, and specifically, I've had two reach out. So I'd be interested, but I don't want to make separate meals for my kids from
Hmm.
what I'm doing. Is this doable for my whole family? And the answer is yes,
Hmm.
it's doable. I just did a post this, yes,
That's
or
awesome.
today.
Love it.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And focusing on, like, your meals might look a little different, because
Hmm.
some of us, like, and adults aren't always like this either, but like
Right.
to mix our stuff together. But my kids, that's, we start, everybody's getting the same food. And so we're taking bites even of things that maybe we don't like.
Hmm.
Because as I've learned, even with my daughter, you take those bites and maybe 5 times later, you're going to end up liking it. She's somebody that doesn't like meats very
Yep.
often. Now she's like, oh, I love pork chops.
Hmm.
So, it's baby steps. So, yes,
Hmm.
you can do this. And that's where I say simplify it, right?
Hmm.
Have the same meal. Maybe you're making, you start slowly. You're not going to remove maybe the noodles. Maybe you go with a gluten-free noodle for your
Hmm.
kids, as a side, if they're used to always having their mac and cheese, right?
Right.
Maybe you're not going to have that, but start small. But you don't have to make separate meals.
Hmm.
Like I said, that's where it is. Also, like I said, simple, small steps. So maybe pick one vegetable that you haven't tried before and bring it in. Or maybe you just don't do vegetables. So
Hmm.
focus on bringing vegetables into one meal the first week. And then the next week, you focus
Hmm.
on 2 meals.
Right.
You have to focus on where you're starting from, right?
Hmm.
Like, some of us are starting from square one.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you have to meet yourself where you're at and grow from there.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
if you challenge yourself to, I mean, some people react well, like the rip the Band-Aid type of
Hmm.
deep dive in. Some just are more successful that way.
Yep.
But there's the others that are doing the step at the time, and it's okay.
Hmm.
And don't overwhelm yourself, because most of the time, if you overwhelm yourself, you you fail. Not
Hmm.
fail. That's
Right.
not the word
You
I
think that you're
You
failing, but you're
think you're
not. Like,
failing.
and you
Yeah.
sometimes just throw your hands up and you're like, this is too much.
Right.
But really what you're saying, I mean, is right. Like, it's not that. It's just, you just got to focus on that one thing. And what I tell people too, it's like, because we are our own worst critics, right? We beat
Mhm.
ourselves up. Um, we, set a goal. And if we don't meet it, then it's like, oh, how come I'm not able to stick to anything? Like, what's going on? And, it's just often sometimes just reminding yourself, okay, where was I a week ago? Where was I 2 weeks ago, a month ago? look how much I've learned. I wasn't eating any vegetables at all a few months ago, and now I'm eating this, this, and that. And same with the kids, right? Like, I when you were talking about your daughter, my daughter went through the same thing. Like, she went through this, it was probably a good year and a half where she was just did not want to eat meat. She ate like 2 kinds of meat, bacon and turkey. And I was just like, at first you're just like, oh my gosh. And you're like, well, try this, try that. And then, eventually I just backed off, and I was just like, we would continue to make our meals. Like you were saying, I would make whatever I was going to make. It wasn't always turkey, and it wasn't always bacon. But I did find myself sometimes frying her an egg, or, doing, because I was just like, you have to have protein, so I'd make sure she had some other kind of source of protein. But I still continued to make different things, to offer different things. What I found was helpful for us, and by the way, now she's eating like steak, pork chops, and all of that. So
awesome. That's great.
Don't give up hope, daddies. But what I found helped for us is I would make the food, whatever we were having, I would serve it family style on the kitchen table. So we would do that whether we were sitting at the table or not, right? So it's kind of like a little buffet. And I would always include things that they did like.
Right.
And then I would throw in maybe 1 or 2 things that they had either hadn't eaten or didn't like. Even if they had seen it 10 times before, I knew they didn't like it, I still put it all out there. And it's really amazing how, when somebody really feels or is empowered that they have the choice instead of being made to eat something, that they're more likely to choose it, right?
Right.
What do you think? What do you know? So that has actually worked well for me. And both of my kids have tried new things that they were refusing to try prior to that. It didn't work the first time I did it. I just kept doing it. That's the other thing, right? I don't know if do you agree? Like, do you feel like you offer?
You always have to offer, with so many things. I'm trying to think offhand what food it is, but, eggs, for instance. My kids, my son loved eggs when he was little, and then he went through a phase where he didn't have it. And then I started making them, and it was just sort of, I'd offer it. They didn't always want it. Now he asks for the eggs. Right. And, you just have to keep offering, and eventually they're going to like it. Maybe they won't. Maybe it's just something they don't like. But yes, I think you have to keep at it. And like you said, offer things they do like to accompany it, because they're more apt to try that other thing when they're getting a little of something they enjoy as well. Yeah. You can't eliminate it all right away, because then they're going to go against you the whole way, I feel like.
Yeah. The other thing too is, I feel like modeling, what you want your kids or family members or who, just doing your thing, right? Regardless, eating those nutrient-dense whole foods. They watch, they're listening, they're sponges, right? And eventually they may become interested in trying that, or asking questions about how you're making that, and I know we're kind of jumping ahead with some of the points that we were talking about going, through these points. But with the kids, I have found that getting them involved for sure, in the kitchen, my daughter now, she's 9, getting ready to turn 10. Like I said, she's now starting to help me prep, which is amazing. Chopping vegetables, and she wants to make her own eggs, which she ate eggs her whole life until about a year ago. She just decided she wasn't going to eat eggs anymore, which I was just like, what? But then all of a sudden, the other night, she was like, I think I want to try to cook my own eggs. And I was like, yeah, you can totally do that. If you're going to eat eggs, you can make them all by yourself. So she did, and she eats eggs every day now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah, I feel like when they're empowered and are in control, don't we all like to have control? So they're kids, they want control too. And I think when we give them the tools, I mean, that's where we both, really love about this is educating, right? We educate and then give them the tools to make those choices, to succeed, to make their bodies function and be healthy, happy. And my son the other day, he's like, I'll make the tacos for you. And so he was did the ground beef, and like he was so proud of himself. And I think that's huge. And like yesterday I asked my daughter to help me make do the collagen gummies. And she helped me make them. And so now they think that's the coolest thing. And so, I used to beg for them to be a part of things, and they, it was hit or miss. And now they're coming because that's where I'm at, right? And like you said, the modeling of it, I spend time in the kitchen because that's where I have the control to help my family with their wellness.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is a good segue into the next challenge that I often hear from clients, and I'm sure you do too, is the time, right? The time that it takes to prepare some of these meals. It takes a little more effort and time to prepare a meal, using real food ingredients, or, whole real food ingredients, as opposed to throwing something in the oven like a pizza or something frozen or something from a box, right? So it's convenience too. So, what are some of the, strategies that you offer to clients when they share this concern about making time or not having enough time?
Not having enough time. I mean, ultimately, not having enough time comes down to priorities, right? And what is your highest priority? If you really want to see the change, you're going to have to prioritize that time. So, there's a lot of work sometimes in it. There's other quick options too, but it's time, and it's also planning, pre-planning. As parents, we all know you have to plan things out, right? So we're planning our week ahead. We have to plan out our meals sometimes. It doesn't mean, like, I'm not huge into Monday is this meal, Tuesday is like we have a board on our kitchen that we talk about usually whatever day is like works for our schedule to plan for the week ahead. So it might be Sunday. And I ask everybody, I include my family, but I say, what do you like to eat this week? And so then they give their input, and then we sort of plan out what we'd like to eat. And that gives me an idea for when I go to the grocery store, or what day I maybe have more time to prep some food. And by prep food, again, I'm not doing like big, like the whole kitchen's overwhelmed by meal prep. That's, it's more, a lot of my prep is just cutting up vegetables and having things on hand that are already washed, sliced, ready to go for the most part, not everything.
Right.
Or meat thawed out or bought, or so it's a lot of planning and just time management. When you have, like, if we're having breakfast on Sunday mornings, maybe I'll make the whole thing of bacon, so then I can use it throughout the week for my kids. Same with like sausage. So it's more the pre-planning and using your time wisely is what I try to tell people. We're a family that's on the go a lot with sports and things like that. So when we go to sports, I plan ahead. Like this weekend, for instance, coming up, my son's in a baseball tournament and my daughter has a soccer game. We're going to have some divide and conquer, and we don't know, how those evenings will look. So I plan to make things ahead so that are easy to reheat. Warm up, take on the go. We're the family that brings the cooler to the ballpark with our vegetables and our yogurt, or yogurts, or guacamole, and chicken and chicken wings and things like that. So, yeah,
That's awesome.
How about you guys?
Yeah, like I was just going to say, I'm with you. Like, I'm definitely not a meal prepper. I mean, you see there's bloggers and websites with, like you said, their counters are just full of these individual meals. They all look the same. That stresses me out to even think about doing that. But it works for some people. I mean, everybody's different, right? There are people that are 100%, my sister included, okay with eating the same exact thing every day the whole week. Like, she makes her salad, she grills her chicken on Sunday, puts them on the salads, makes her dressing, and it's awesome.
That's great.
For me, I like to eat. I might not be in the mood for chicken tomorrow, so I batch cook instead, right? So I will make a sheet pan full of chicken, whether it's thighs, or mostly I get thighs, but once in a while I'll change it up, or sausage, or I don't know, like, it's usually sausage or chicken, but we could do chicken burgers or things like that too. Meatballs, but I will batch cook a big sheet pan of protein. I'll hard boil eggs or steam them, right? And have a whole bowl of eggs in the fridge too. I'll have a big thing of salad. That's so easy to throw protein on top of a salad. I'll make, some other side. Like, my daughter makes this awesome, we've been making it together, but this lime quinoa salad.
Yeah, I saw that the other day.
Yeah, that has tomatoes and cucumbers. She really loves that with sprouted quinoa. So yeah, like, I just like having things that are easy to grab and throw together, so that when you do find yourself in a situation where nothing's cooked, you can easily just 5 minutes or less throw a meal together, right?
Right.
That's what works for me. But I love the idea that you ask your family what they want to eat for the week.
Yeah, like, I feel like
it gives them
a voice. It gives them the voice, and also I think it gives them, if they have one thing that they're looking forward to in the week, maybe the one that they don't look forward to. Like, my daughter sometimes doesn't like, that depends on what fish I have. Like, she might not agree with that, but I think if she knows, okay, she likes lasagna soup we make, and
nice.
So she looks forward to that. So if she knows she's getting that in the week, so it allows them to be included. And then I, like, during COVID, when we were all at home, I had they had to pick what we were going to have, and then they got to help cook it. So,
cool.
We're learning those tasks, and I hope this summer we'll get back to it. It's less crazy. But again, setting them up for success, right?
Yeah, I love that. So I like what you were saying about time and priorities too, because it's such a tough conversation sometimes to have, right? Like, I know I have clients or even just friends, and we talk about this stuff all the time. And, every person's situation is different. There are legitimately people that really do not have a lot of time, right? They're working 3 jobs, or, their kids are in sports. So maybe they're working full time during the day, and literally there's like 10 minutes, get in the door, everybody get in car, and they're going to sports, and they're eating on the run all the time, right? So, I do want to acknowledge that we do get that. Like, there's people that do have a little more time. And there are people, and I think that you were kind of alluding to, and I mean, I've been there, and I have friends and clients that have admitted it too. It's like, sometimes you think you don't have the time, or you tell yourself you don't have the time. But then when you really look at your day, right, and you look at where you're spending your time, whether that's, I don't know, watching, like, even if it's something online, or watching Netflix, or like, and don't get me wrong, I am 100% supportive of doing what you need and what you want to do. I love Netflix. I will sit there and watch Netflix with most every night, so I'm not poo-pooing that time if that's valuable to you. But if you do want to improve your health, if you're struggling with some issues, if you want to transition your family, away from the highly processed foods to a more nutritious diet, or way of eating, it takes effort, right? So we do have to sacrifice some things.
Right.
And it's a reality, right? It is going to require you being in the kitchen. It's going to require you cooking or prepping to some extent. I mean, if you can outsource that, you're, you know, budget wise, if you can like have somebody do that for you, then okay. Most of us probably don't or cannot do that.
Right.
But even if it's just blocking out an hour or two, like on a Sunday or a Saturday, or, you know, even if it's 30 minutes a day, or I don't know, whatever works for you in your schedule. I think, you know, the batch cooking things at the same time has helped for me too. Cooking enough for leftovers, like even if you are cooking for dinner, I mean, it only takes 30 seconds to like double up on those veggies or double up on the protein, right? And then having that for lunch the next day. I don't know. Those are just things popping into my head, but I think that sometimes we tell ourselves that we don't have time, but sometimes we don't make the time, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, it's that picking, right? You know, there's a crock pot. Most everybody has a crock pot. You can't throw chicken breasts in the crock pot or thighs or what have you. So yes, it's the prioritizing. Yeah, I choose more often to be making some meals than sitting on the couch watching Netflix. That's just me. That's like you said, but it doesn't mean that's wrong. And like you said, you've got to prioritize what's good for you. There's also weeks that I choose that, like, you know what, for the sanity of my family, for me, we're eating out or we're ordering something in, like that. Those are okay. You've got to choose that. You have to weigh those, you know, the pros and cons of those situations. But I had a restart participant that was like, I do not cook. Can I still do this? I'm like, you can, but there are things that you're. And by the end, she was actually cooking. And so, but at the beginning, she started with ordering meals through, I forget which one it was. Green.
It was like a delivery service, like Some Basket.
Yeah, the delivery. So she did that for like 2 meals a week for her dinners, and that helped her get started. So even if, like you said, finding something, you know, a service that maybe fits within your budget, or maybe you have a friend that really likes to do that, pay them a little extra to make you double what they're doing. So finding those connections and making it easier on yourself are huge. There are ways to buy, you know, pre-cut, pre-sliced. So again, like when we talked about at the beginning, going back to that, keep it simple. You know, start basic and prioritizing that. So maybe it's just one day a week that you got it, you know, together. You know, that, and that's another thing, like me saying, we talk about our meal for the week. Look at your schedule. Wednesdays, we don't have anything that evening. So yeah, you're going to make maybe double of something, or cut up all your vegetables. So you just prioritizing that time. Yeah.
And like we were saying, if you have kids or people, you know, that want to help, have them do it, you know, have them cut the vegetables and help with that for sure. Gosh, there was something that I was going to ask about that we were just talking about. Hopefully, I think it'll come back to me. And if anybody is listening, comment where you're from or where you're listening from. If you are watching the playback, comment that you're watching the playback. And any questions that you have, pop them in, or challenges or struggles that you're dealing with that you need some support maybe, or maybe we'll have some ideas for you. Or if you have ideas, please share them. Like what's worked for you, you know, just in terms of like cooking and prepping and getting your kids on board and things like that. All right, well, so we talked a little bit about time, right? And we talked about some strategies. So batch cooking, Making enough for leftovers, right? I am the queen of leftovers. There are some people that don't do leftovers. I just can't imagine. Like we eat leftovers all the time. We repurpose them. For example, you can do like a whole chicken in a crock pot, right? So you have the chicken, have dinner that night with just chicken, maybe roast some vegetables. Then you can take all that, the whatever's left of the chicken, have it on the side for, chicken salad or chicken, like topping salads, like green salads. So once you removed any leftovers, if you have any, putting those over here on the side to make those things. And then you have the carcass, right? The bones and all of that in your crock pot still. So you can make bone broth. So you're filling that up with water, adding a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, maybe throwing in some herbs or, whatever seasonings you have in the spice rack, and maybe some onions, garlic, whatever. And then you cook that for like 8 to 8 hours, or even I've even done it overnight and into the next day. And then you have a nice broth that's like full of minerals and, vitamins, and it's really good for your gut, and it's really tasty in the morning. And you can use that also as a base for soups too.
Right. Soups. I even throw it in when I'm making tacos, like in the meat.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You're sneaking that in there. A lot of things say when you put your seasoning in, put some water. Well, we just use that. Or when I'm making quinoa or something like that, I use the bone broth rather than just water.
That's a good idea. I have another friend who uses it to make her rice.
Yes.
So so instead of water, she'll just give it more of a nutrient boost, right? And use bone broth or chicken broth.
And the flavor is awesome too. It increases that flavoring. It's so great afterwards too.
Yep. So the next on my list too, as far as under the strategies, and I'm sure, and we talked about this in talking with your clients, that you shared this too. It makes it a lot easier to choose nutritious foods when you have and buy nutritious foods in your house, right?
Right.
So, and I hear that all the time. It's like, well, I just always grab this other thing, or if the other stuff is there that's not great, I go for that instead of the good stuff, or I just don't have anything. And it's like, well, how can we fix that, right? Like,
well, I mean, it's just like when people say, "Oh, my kid."
Oops. Faded out a minute. Julie, you're frozen.
Not frozen here. Are you there?
Hey, you froze up for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, you froze up for a second. So
none of it freezes here. It's weird. Oh well.
Well, so we missed it, or I missed it. I don't know if anybody else did, but I don't know. I feel like I missed that whole story. Whatever you said.
Well, it was, as far as everybody complains about, oh, my kids are always wanting this or always eating this. Well, who's buying it?
Right.
We are. So it's, like you said, it's what we have accessible. So choosing and if you're cleaning out, you do this. And I work with some clients on this as well, as the pantry clean out, the fridge, the restocking of the fridge. And you really have to, so you aren't grabbing for the things.
Froze up again. We got it. Okay, you're back. Okay. You're back now.
Okay. Sorry.
I think it's also really windy here. I don't know. I mean, you're in a completely different state, but the other thing I was going to say, just in line with what you were sharing, is I thought of a story of my daughter when she was 2.5. It's when I really started to learn about all of this stuff and take interest in reading ingredients, and I started to learn about juice, right? So I was buying juice for her, and I was thinking, oh, I'm buying I think it was even like ocean spray, no sugar added, all the healthy marketing things on the front, right? So I was like, oh, well, this is good for her, right? Like this is, it's juice. It comes from cranberries, you know?
Whole fruit, yeah.
It's fruit, right? So, but she was pretty much drinking juice all the time. She didn't want water. She had juice, right? So I started to learn about the processing of these juices in the store and how, you know, most people think that they're getting all of those nutrients in the same way that they would if they were eating a whole fruit, right? But what happens is most of the nutrients are stripped during the processing. There's no fiber left. There's no antioxidants left. There's nothing really good left except for the tasty sugar. So it's like essentially sugar water that they're drinking, right? Whether it's orange juice, cranberry juice, grape juice, most of the juice, even if it's 100% juice, it's going to have all those good things removed during processing because, you know, all of the pulp, all of those things are removed. So, anyways, I knew she loved her juice and it was stressing me out. I was like, I really want to wean her off of this juice. So I started to just dilute it and dilute it and dilute it, which worked for a little bit, but she still was just like not drinking water. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to not buy it. You know, I think somebody actually suggested that to me. And it was so weird because I was like, what? Like, oh, really? Like, I was just, you know, it's like something so simple that I needed somebody to tell me like, well, why are you buying it? And I'm like, you're right. So I just didn't buy it. And I was like, oh gosh, she's going to be so upset. She's, you know, and she cried for that first day and like would, you know, like whining, wanted her juice. And I was like, we don't have it. We don't have any more, you know? And the next day she didn't even ask for it. She just drank her water. So I think that and that's more of like with the younger kids, you know, that we really worry about not giving them what they're used to, you know, like, I mean, I was there, I was like I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting her all kinds of healthy food. She's eating organic puff cereal. She's eating like, you know, all of these organic processed foods. But you don't know until you know, right? I mean, I never read ingredients or I didn't understand how blood sugar regulation worked and all of that. And, but it was amazing time after time when I just stopped buying it. They'd ask for it for like a day or two, but then it just eventually became the norm that it wasn't available in the house. So you can create your own new normal, right? Like, I don't know. So they my kids were the ones that until school started, they didn't know what a lot of that stuff was. And then they went to school and it was just like,
did you know there's
so-and-so eats Oreos for lunch every day?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've had some of the same moments where it's like, oh gosh, they're going to be so angry. And again, you know, some of our changes came when my kids were older than what yours have, but it's still sort of the same idea. I mean, you know, yeah, they're older, so they're maybe a little more vocal about it. But for the most part, they, you know, we all adapt. If it's not there, we're not going to eat it. And, you know, trying to, again, going back to that now with the older kids, the educating part, right? Educating them on reading the labels. And I sort of had a moment yesterday. I was in a classroom at our school and overhearing some conversations of junior high age kids and their discussions on food. And it was really a aha like moment for me of like, we need to get in here and talk to these kids because they are sponges. They're still at that age where they want to know it. And if we give them the tools to make those choices on their own, rather than, they're at that age too, though, if you tell them what to do, they're going to do the opposite.
Oh yeah, totally.
And fight you the whole way. So, yeah, the educating part and showing them, giving them, I mean, it's this tools like reading the label, like we see with our clients with Restart, right? I mean, how eye-opening it is. Even for me, there are still things that surprise me every now and then that I just assume, and then it's like, oh, no, look, there's that. Or so I'm trying to teach my kids, can you pronounce it? You and I talk about this. Can you make it at your house? Can you find all these ingredients in the store and make that? Those are huge starting points for families, for kids, and I think it helps people connect those dots of, you know, real, like we talk about real food, but people are like, well, I'm eating real food. But if you look at that ingredient label, you're not, you know, a lot of times they're not real foods.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and I think that you're right that, and even now I was just thinking like, we really didn't even explain what the standard American diet is.
No, we didn't.
And we should have done that in the beginning. So in the wellness space, or even in the media, sometimes you will see the SAD diet, and it's SAD, and it's actually an acronym for Standard American Diet. And that diet, the SAD diet, consists of highly processed foods that are devoid of nutrients, really not offering you a whole lot in terms of nutritional value. You know, many of them just convert quickly to sugar in your body. A lot of them have added sugars, artificial ingredients, you know, ingredients that contribute to inflammation in the body, that drive up your blood sugar, basically, you know, eventually getting you to a place where you're going to be battling some issues. You know, that, and that's what, I mean, the clients that Julie and I see now are people coming in with a lot of, you know, symptoms that have a lot to do with diet and lifestyle, and they're ready to feel better and to make changes, and learning about ingredients and the impact that these ingredients have on our bodies, and, you know, learning about different fats, right? The fats that are nourishing and critical to our health. Like, they're not bad. They're really like important for you to include in your diet, but they're also fats that are industrialized, like man-made fats that are often found in these processed foods that are not good. They also contribute to inflammation. And so it's just learning these things. And like Julie was saying earlier in our discussion about how it can be really overwhelming at first. I was completely overwhelmed when I started learning about this stuff. And as soon as you learned something, there was something else, right? That you are like, what? Like, I thought that this was this. And so there's just like all of these new things. And I'm even 8 or 9, gosh, I'm almost 10 years into this now. And there are still things that I'm learning new every day and making changes and adapting. And, you know, health is not an A to B thing, or, you know, it's not like, okay, this is the destination and you get there and it's done. It's an ongoing journey where you're just constantly evolving your needs. Your body changes. You go through phases in your life where your needs are going to change. There are going to be things coming up. You know, we have different levels of stress, different things happening, like hormonally, right? That we have to support our bodies in different ways. And our kids too, right? Like, even they're developing, and, you know, they're going to need different things. And each person is going to need different things based on what their needs are and where they are in their health journey. So give yourself a break for sure. And just like Julie was saying, take one thing at a time. You know, you don't have to know it all. Just be grateful. Like, wow, I learned what cellulose was today. That's been in my shredded cheese. Like, now, you know, so now I'm going to be buying block cheese. Like, you know, just, those are huge little things. Or the artificial dyes, you know, you can learn, how do I identify an artificial dye in my ingredients list? Usually it's a color followed by a number, like red 40, you know, so learning about those things. And like Julie was saying, looking at the ingredients, and do you recognize them? Are they made with real whole foods? And when I say real whole foods, meaning, you know, foods as close to or in their natural state. An orange, you know, an apple, broccoli, like a steak, you know, I mean, the steak, okay, it didn't walk in there, but you know, nothing has been, it's been cut up basically, right? So it hasn't been, now as compared to say a hot dog, right? Like a hot dog is full of all kinds of stuff, scraps, and then there's preservatives and there's added stuff you probably could not pronounce. Now there are hot dogs that are made with beef, salt, you know, and like maybe some spices and stuff. Like Applegate has a brand or has a options for that, right? So there are options, and I'll give it back to you, Julie. But I today went grocery shopping with a client, and it's one of my favorite things to do. You know, and I one of the questions I always ask is like, what is one of your guilty pleasures, right? Like, you know, whether it's chips or, you know, taco shells, you know, whatever it is. There's always like a line of good, better, and best. I don't know. I feel like maybe not for everything, but for a lot of things, there are better versions of that, you know, that are, I don't like using the term cleaner, but basically meaning they're made with simple ingredients versus all of the fillers, right?
Yeah. It's going back to making, if you want the potato chip, right? Like find the one that's maybe made with the avocado oil or, you know,
coconut oil or
Right. It doesn't mean it's nutritious.
No.
But it's better oils or fats for your body that your body recognizes, right?
Exactly.
So, and like what you were talking about, applaud yourself, celebrate those steps. So maybe you went from the good to the better this time, and you know that's progress, and that's what we teach and work with our clients on a daily basis of progress over perfection. None of us are perfect.
Nope.
And this is about connecting the dots, simplifying your life, simplifying things to work for you where you're at, while helping your body feel its best. I mean, a lot of times people are looking for losing the weight, right? Or, but most of the time when I'm done working with a client or have worked with them for a while, it's not always about the weight they lost or it's how they feel. And that's what they, you know, are so happy with. And that's what I want my kids to feel good, right? And we all want our families and ourselves to feel good. And at the end of the day, that's simplifying things, making yourself feel good. When you feel good, you're happy. You're enjoying that life that you have.
Absolutely. And I think I don't know, you'd probably agree that for a lot of people, sometimes it takes getting to that point where they do feel good, right? It gets a little easier when you are able to make that connection. Like, oh my gosh, I haven't had this much energy in years, just from changing my diet. Or I've had acne for years. Or my son, like I get this all the time in working with families that have, you know, teenagers that are struggling with acne, removing certain foods and, you know, tweaking their diet and it's gone, right? And they're just like, whoa, like, okay, what else can I do? Like, what else can I change to feel like to improve in this area or whatever? And it just motivates you more when you do get to that point and you're like, I mean, I always tell the story of my husband with his migraines. Like he had migraines every week to Pillets for years, like where he would come home from work, have to just go straight to bed. He'd get sick. And we did we just decided for 30 days. And this was like way back before the very beginning of this journey for me. And we decided for 30 days to eat nothing but real food. And switched everything low fat to full fat. Like, so we didn't even cut out dairy or grains. We just like optimized everything in terms of ingredients. We read ingredients on everything. We didn't have added sugars, or or actually we did. We still included raw honey and maple syrup, but we didn't do like the refined sugar.
Right.
We didn't eat anything highly processed. We, again, got more good fats in, which was huge. And with less than 2 weeks, he wasn't having them. And that sold him. He was just like, I can't believe this. Like, this is crazy. So he will get them once in a while. And usually it's after, I mean, and he's the one that will say, it was because I had that pizza yesterday, or it was because, I mean, he's now able to, he's like, it's because of this. Or sometimes, you know, it just, we don't react to certain things until a couple of days later. Right. So anyway, like I think for a lot of people, it's seeing that progress and seeing how much of a difference it makes, whether it's inflammation being reduced. I know there was a participant in my restart class a couple of classes ago that had rheumatoid arthritis really bad. And they, you know, were struggling. So it's autoimmune condition, struggling with some other stuff, digestive as well. And, you know, I asked her, so after like a week into the protocol, she was like, oh my gosh, I feel great. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, what is that? What is great to you? And she's like, I could get out of bed this morning and I'm not in pain. And I haven't felt that in years. And so that kind of stuff, when people share those experiences, I'm just like, that's why I love what I do.
Exactly.
You know, and like you were saying, I mean, we don't know everything. Like we're just working, we're just learning and sharing and empowering people to take their own health back take control of their own health. And I love teaching other people, and I'm sure you do too, because we've talked about this. It's like advocating for themselves too, you know, when it comes to like, well, just a lot of situations, but like their healthcare maybe that they're receiving, that they haven't been getting answers and like things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love it. And I know it's tough. Like change is tough, right? For some people. And I love that you have this message in almost every post that you share of like, keep it simple, you know, like it doesn't have to be about long recipes or, you know, like just being in the kitchen all day or stressing about it. Just stress. If you're stressing that much about your food, it's not healthy for you either. So
exactly. Right? If you're stressed and you're eating even healthy, it's not doing what it could do for you because of the stress.
Exactly.
So that's, you know, all those foundations that we work with clients on and trying to find that balance and simplicity of it all, because it really is simple. I've had a past client, they're like, I've done everything, you know, Weight Watchers, and had success with some of them, but then couldn't stick with it. And they have said after working through this, it's the simplest thing I've ever done for myself and my health. And I had another client recently that was like, she was one that she did it just sort of hesitant. Like I wasn't sure.
Froze up for a second again. You're frozen.
Oh, shoot. Is it there?
That's okay. You're back now, but
okay.
It's okay. So you were sharing just basically that, you know, you had a client that was hesitant about doing the program, the restart program, correct?
Yeah. And so I didn't know, you know, I think she was just going through the motions. And in the end, she messaged me just recently, and it's been several months since we've done this. She's stuck with it, and she's removed processed and sugar. And she says she's never felt this healthy in her entire life. And she's in her 60s. And, you know, she said, you know, it's so simple. It's so simple that it's like, aha, once you do get it, you know?
Well, I mean, and I like, I mean, simple also being that, I mean, the other night I told my Restart peeps, I was just like, you know what? Because they were asking very specific questions about like, you know, does this fruit have more, you know, is it low glycemic versus this fruit and all this stuff? And, you know, and I was like, look, just think, eat real food. Don't stress about, I mean, I know that like the program is, you know, one of the purposes is to balance blood sugar and we need to be conscious of things. But like, you know, if you're starting from going, you know, you're eating a lot of the processed foods and this is your first time really trying to eat more wholesome, nutrient dense, real foods, don't stress about that. Like, eat the banana, eat like any, you know, it's like, just, you're going to be getting in so many nutrients that you're not used to getting into. Like, you're just going to feel good. And yeah, and it's like, what did your great grandparents eat? Would your great grandmother recognize that granola bar or that energy drink? Or like, no, you know, like they wouldn't. And so that keeps it easy too. It's like you were saying, can you make this in your kitchen when you read these ingredients? I mean, is there, you know, we talk all the time about almond milks or nut milks, and like almond milk is, if you were to make almond milk at home, it's made with almonds and water, and that's it. When you look at the ingredients on some of these almond milks, I mean, I counted one time, it was like 43 ingredients or something, right? And it's like, and then there's this article, a couple of articles that I'd read not that long after that, where it was like, okay, yeah, most almond milks have less than 2% almonds in them. And it's like, but it's being marketed, the food industry is so savvy and they market these products as being healthy and that you need them. And, you know, and I don't know, I mean, that was kind of a side, like a tangent, but really just getting back to basics and thinking like, you know, how did we survive all of these years? Like, you know, before all of these processed foods were available. So we did, I think there were some questions that were asked that we covered. So we, you know, there was definitely some questions about time management and, oh, there was a question, and we don't have to spend too much time on it, but I did want to touch on it, but it was about budget. So, and we had talked a little bit about this earlier today. Well, I'll just hand it over to you and then I can kind of add on. But what do you share with your clients, or what are some suggestions for saving some money when it comes to eating in this way?
Well, I mean, we sort of touched on that as far as, you know, budget. You have to figure out where you're coming from, right? And again, some of those keys are prioritizing where you want to spend your money, what products, and then also, you know, a lot of times I have the question, organic, it's so expensive. Should I buy everything organic? Well, again, looking at your budget, also looking at the dirty dozen is a good priority. I had someone like, oh, I eat, you know, these things in the dirty dozen. So I said, well, then focus. Go ahead.
No, I was just say, tell us what that is. What's the dirty dozen and it's the clean 15 too, right?
There's a clean 15 and a dirty dozen. So those are like the top 12 of produce that are exposed to more exposed to pesticides and are more apt to have higher levels of them. So we're going to look at maybe the organic more so for those. I know strawberries is always one on there. I think peppers are on there right now. Yeah, blueberries, things like that. So, you know, prioritizing the things that you eat the most of and trying to put those in your budget. Maybe you focus those for your higher priced produce, if you will. Also, batch cooking, what you talked about, that's another way to save budget-wise. Also, eating seasonally.
I was just going to say that,
Yeah, and or going, and, you know, and seasonally also aligns with, this is the time of the year, all those farmers markets, right? Buying local. is another, you know, sometimes local seems more expensive, but in actuality, you're cutting out that middleman thing, right? And find a local farmer, you know, get your, over time, buying even a half a cow if you can afford it, or, you know, things like that are going to save your money and also save you money in the long run as far as you're not going to the grocery store as often, right? So when we go to the store, what do we tend to do? Buy things we didn't need, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, totally. And I also like the local, this is my 4th or maybe even my 5th year joining my local CSA, which is basically community shared agriculture. And we, every week, and it's like 12 weeks from June to August, or the end of August. And every week we get a bundle of vegetables or produce, that fruit too. Sometimes there's cantaloupes and things, but it's mostly vegetables that they grow right on the farm. They don't spray. Like, I mean, I love this farm. It's, if you're in this area, Clark's Farm in Ellicott City, they have a really great CSA program, and they also do a meat CSA, I think. So check and see. And they also sell all of that stuff too. But, you know, it's also saving you money too, because most of the time they are literally pulling those vegetables and fruits from the earth like that day. So not only is it going to be more nutritious, because over time, you know, and this is not to say that, you know, like the fruit and vegetables are not nutritious that you're buying from the store that are coming 3,000 miles away. Like, I'm not saying that. They are still very nutritious, but when fruits or vegetables, plants are removed from their nutrition source, the earth, or a tree that's, you know, then enzymes are released and they start to break down, right? So when you have produce that's 3 to 4 weeks old by the time it gets to even the shelves on the store, you know, as compared to something that's been picked that day, right? It's not going to go that as fast. It's going to be, it's going to last a lot longer in your fridge. And how many of us waste? I mean, sometimes things go bad, you know, that you're buying. I mean, we're actually pretty good now about that. I just hate wasting food. So if something's getting ready to go bad, I'll throw it in like stir fry or something, even if it doesn't really belong there. But that's another way to save money. Like,
exactly.
You know, throw things into soups or stir fries or whatever.
You can always saute something, right?
Exactly. Mix it in the meat. Like, I've had shredded coleslaw and I just like mix it in my burgers and, you know, whatever. Also Costco is like, or, you know, membership places like that are a good way to save money.
Also, even growing your own stuff. And I sort of did a thing on this recently. You know, you don't have a big yard. You don't even have to have a yard to grow some things. I've lived, you know, in apartments and condos and done pot gardening. So, you know, not pot gardening. That's
I was just going to say, really? All right.
Container gardening would be more apt. But yeah, like I started small. Tomatoes. You can do tomatoes in a pot. I'm sorry, container. I need to use that word.
What are you selling over there, Julie? No,
exactly. That's in Indiana. But you can save that way. Tomatoes are easy. Sugar snap peas, things like that. You can even do carrots if you have a big enough pot container. You can do your carrots. So, you know, there are ways to save that way as well, seasonally.
The other thing, the last thing too that we can, go ahead. Sorry. And then I'll add in.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, when we were talking earlier about talking, you know, with clients about time and things, and just prioritizing that time, right? So with budget, it's similar. Like, I can't tell you how many times that the budget issue comes up, because it can be a sticker shock, right? When you're, you know, buying, say, conventional beef, right, that comes from a factory farm, to grass-fed beef, or regular eggs to pastured eggs, things like that. Or even just I mean, just real like vegetables, like depending on what you're buying, it's going to be more expensive than some of the processed foods, right?
Right.
So what I like to have clients do is just to not look at their food budget only, but to look at their entire budget, right?
Right.
So when I started buying different foods and less of the processed foods, yeah, there was a shift. There was like a little bit of an increase in the food budget. However, when we looked at our entire budget, like so much money that we used to spend on going out to eat, right?
Exactly.
Like we actually, I think, budgeted, it was like $300 or something like that, like a month to going out to eat. Coffee, stopping for coffee every morning on the way to work. I mean, there was a client recently that when we were working together on this, she was like, I spend over $50. It was like $50 to $60 a week on coffee, right?
Right.
So subscriptions that you don't use,
Right.
like, alcohol, right? Like buying alcohol. And not to say that you should or shouldn't buy any of these things, but
Right.
I think it's important to at least recognize or look at your whole budget. And because when we started changing, making changes in cooking more at home, that $300 budget went down to 50. So that was $250 extra that, we had to spend on more quality, nourishing foods. And also it's an investment in your health. So, we rarely get sick. And if somebody does come down with a cold, they snuff it out within a day because we just really work hard on, strengthening our immune systems and getting in those nutrients. And so it is I think, just looking at everything, and you don't realize where some of your money is going, right? Like to some of the things that I was mentioning or other things. And again, not to say, I mean, we go out to eat, I love going out to eat once in a while. I'll stop and grab a coffee once in a while. So it's not about that. It's just looking at if you're telling yourself, I can't afford to spend any more on my food, maybe it's just, worth looking at what you're spending your money on in other areas and seeing if there's a little bit of flexibility there. What do you think? Oh, you froze up again. Wait till she comes back. Man. Julie, if you can hear me, you're frozen.
Am I unfroze yet?
Yes, now you are.
Okay. It's also what you're buying as far as the food. Like, when you're buying the good fats, the proteins that are going to get you longer, you're not going to be as hungry as
That's a good point.
You're having the sugary drink for your breakfast, your quick breakfast. Well, yeah, you're going to be hungry by 10 o'clock because you didn't nourish your body. So you have to prioritize. Is that $3 energy drink giving you what you need to get you through your morning? Whereas if you're buying the meats and the proteins and the fats that are going to get you further. So that's another comparable as far as budgeting.
No, that's a great point. Like you will be less snacky and eating less of meat, like not feeling as hungry if you're eating enough protein and good fats and, just having that balanced, good nourishing plate. And we talk all about that in Restart, right? That's a good one.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question before we wrap up, there was someone that asked about kids' sports. So, they're a sports family. The mom, she's starting, it's probably a few years ago, started making changes and really loves that, they're just doing really well. They feel great. She's seen a lot of the improvements that we've been talking about just from shifting over to more, less processed foods and more like whole foods. So she's like, how do you navigate going to sometimes these social events, or she was particularly talking about her sports events, because she's like, everybody just brings like Gatorade or energy drinks and chips and stuff, right? Like she's like, and we'll bring protein sticks and, apples, things like that, water. And she sometimes gets funny looks, but she also gets parents that are interested in asking questions and stuff too. So how do you have kids in sports, like how do you navigate that, and what do you share? You said you do bring coolers. Do you ever get little looks from people?
Oh yeah, we get the look all the time. I mean, yeah, and there are people that are going to make those comments. So why aren't you sugaring them up between or whatever? As far as like with COVID, you don't do snacks as much anymore, so that's sort of nice. That's a plus.
But I didn't think about that.
We would just bring what we wanted, and a lot of times I had kids that turned down our snack because it was not what they wanted.
Right.
But I think you just keep doing that. As far as when somebody brings something that for your kid, it's again going back to that educating and making them choose and make choices. Right. I usually, like, we've had where we've gone to soccer practices and they bring, here's a Peeps and a donut. I mean, I'm not kidding. My son got a whole box of Peeps given to him as a snack after baseball one time.
Wow. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Did he feel good after that?
He did not eat them.
Oh. I was like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't be able to run in soccer if I yelled, or maybe for a minute, and then I'd feel really bad.
But so if they're given, I let them choose if they want to have one of those things, maybe. But I also now I feel like they prioritize that, if you know what I mean. Like is it worth it? And I say, would you rather have that, or would you rather have such and such when we get home? And again, choices, connecting the dots. But yeah, you're going to be eventually you find your people, right? That come along with you. And so I prioritize my family, and I want them to be, fueling their bodies with real foods. And so we keep packing the coolers and sharing our foods, because a lot of times we make things and kids are like, oh, that's really good. And I'm like, Mom wants the recipe.
Yeah, I had another lady, like it was last year, that shared that she would bring, things like, oh gosh, odd. I mean, not odd to us, but like odd to like maybe families on a soccer field. But she was all about bringing the protein, and I think she even brought like, I don't know, like, I'm going to say bone broth, but it was something that was kind of like, we would be like, oh man, that's super cool. Where other people would be like, what's going on with that person? But she said that her kids they're like middle school, and one of them I think was like 9th or 10th grade, but they recognized that they just performed well when they ate well. And that was really important to them, right? Like, they were more likely to be able to hang throughout the whole game without getting too tired, and they were able to focus better. They were able to run faster and scored more. It was just, so they started recognizing that, and then they recognized when they did have, the not so great stuff in between on their breaks, that they didn't do as well and they didn't feel good. So that's, like we were talking about in the beginning, full circle, what we want, right? We want them to be able to recognize that.
Right. And I think like those ages are the ages that they start really recognizing it, right? Your kids are still there. Ours are at that age where they're getting it. But then when you hit that middle school, high school age, I feel like it starts separating the kids, right? You can see the ones that their bodies are going to perform better. And
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, gosh, I think we could talk forever. You'll have to come back and like talk some more. So where can people find you for ideas and, I know that I love following you. You have really great posts. I love the one today about, you know, that you don't have to make different meals. And I loved your picture. You actually used visuals of like what you made for dinner. Well, what was it? Tell me. Like,
So I think one of them was like a chicken, like a taco chicken, a shredded chicken. And so mine, I forget, I put mine with like lettuce and, you know, all of the extra vegetables. So my kids' plate was all of those things just separated out, wasn't all together.
It was just deconstructed, right?
Right. And then the other one
was
just
like
sausage,
it doesn't have to look exactly the same. And you had mentioned in your post, like they're still getting the good fats, they're still getting protein, you know, they're getting a variety of vegetables. There may be, I mean, it looks different on their plate than your plate, but they're still getting all of those nutrients. And that's okay. Like it doesn't have to look the same. It can be separate. It doesn't, like the meat sauce doesn't have to be on the spaghetti squash or like whatever you're serving it with. Like, so I love that. So yeah, so sorry.
So yeah, I mean, I like to share lots of that kind of thing. You know, what we're doing through my life and my family and those ahas. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Whole Nutrition Simplified, and I should have my website being launched here by the end of the week. So
yay, cool, awesome.
So
I love that. That's exciting.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I love talking along. This is a great group, and you share some amazing things with people and a variety of things. So,
well, thank you. Well, I loved having you on. And like, again, we need to maybe, I don't know, we'll pick another topic or if anyone has suggestions for topics that, you know, we can discuss next time, let us know. And we'd love to do that. All right. Awesome. Well, have a good night.
You as well. And thank you so much, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you. And good night, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
I gotta figure out. I'm still like, how do you turn this thing off? Okay.